This. Hi, thank you so much for being here today. Um, as I've already mentioned, we'll be recording this, and you can always reach me if you need to talk through any of these things that we'll talk about today. But I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Um, I always like to take a moment. We just actually, with the folks that are here today, we just did a little moment of grounding because this is hard. Um, I love this quote. It's um, It's actually at the front of my book, which is launching January 1, which is all about my grief journey. And I really wanted to write it for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that I hope that it would show a way to kind of get through things like this and just how I did it. Doesn't mean it's the right path for everyone, but it gives you some tools, and that's really the purpose of the book in a lot of ways. Um, and I guess, just want to give yourself credit for being here. You survived this. You will survive this. It will get easier. I was talking to my neighbor the other day, and he lost his daughter actually in February of this year, and uh, I told him that there was a song by Sarah Bareilles called "Love Is Christmas" that I could not listen to in the entire year of 2018 and really into 2019. This is really the first year I've listened to that song without crying, and it just gets easier. Um, it's still there. It just gets easier. Um, so I share that. Um, I wanted to kind of give you a list of some grieving events because we may not think of all of these as being grieving events. Divorce, I think death is an obvious one, but all these other ones, loss of a job, moving, and they can be even positive things. You may have wanted to move. You may have wanted to get that new house, but it can feel like a loss as you leave the old one. Injury. I remember my father had a real tough time when he lost his teeth as he was getting older. Lots of things like that can bother you. Retirement, imprisonment, obviously, you can feel some loss there. Changing schools, a loved one changing their gender. If you have a child or, you know, a relative or even a friend, that can be a big change for the person there. You may be perfectly happy for the person that going through the change, but there's definitely a loss there, in your mind, at least. And then some other grieving events, post-pregnancy, business realignments, which are very, reorgs as we call them, um, change in the frequency of arguments with your partner, um, child leaving or coming out, beginning or ending of school. So these are all events that cause us pause, and depending on how big they are to us, they can be very difficult. And it's helpful to just recognize that this is happening. That that gives you a lot of opportunity for self-care. Whereas you might just try to muscle through, and that can just be the worst thing for everybody. And we'll talk more about that. But I just think it's just good to recognize that these are all events that will likely have some effect. Um, Grief comes in waves. This is I actually note the link to where you can get this description from. It is a lot like a shipwreck. And at first, you just feel like you're drowning, and it is overwhelming. And to a certain extent, you almost numb yourself in some way. Either, we'll talk about that later, but at first it just is almost too much to handle. You're just trying to survive. And then, it starts to get somewhat easier. You almost can sometimes feel guilty that you don't remember it every moment of every day. Um, and then eventually it becomes more about holidays and the moments where you really miss them, because they were such a big part of those days. And those are why we're coming together, but they don't have to be a major holiday. They can be your birthday, their birthday, anniversary of the day you met them. They're all important days, and there's ways to get through them. um, just a little bit easier. And we'll talk about some of those tools today. And there's others. These are just the ones that have worked for me and folks I know. I think the thing is that the waves don't stop. I think that one of the things we do with grief is we try to push it away. Um, we try to do almost everything to avoid it, and it doesn't work. Um, you have to breathe it in, and you have to let it go over you, and then it usually goes away. It's actually not that bad. It's like, for me, it's like getting a vaccination right now. That's the worst thing in the world, is me waiting around to get one. But the time of getting it, the actual vaccination for me is not that bad. That moment of grief is not as bad as me avoiding it. Um, and I can't tell you that. You have to experience it yourself, but it is likely true for you as well. And eventually you integrate what happened in your life. It causes changes. It causes, you to make changes in your life, maybe, because it makes you realize how precious life is. And we'll come back to it, but I think that's a big part of this cycle, and one of the things that you can take away from it. The stages of grief, these are not in any order. They do tend to hit this way, but they can happen at any time. Sometimes you can think you're, for example, here you can read the different stages, but you could be at bargaining and then get shifted right back into anger. I spend a lot of time in anger when I'm grieving. um, so I think it's just really important to know that these are all things that can happen and feelings that you can have. Um, and they're all okay. Feelings are great. They tell you things, they inform you, um, and you don't have to react to them right away. You can just sit with them, or you can just say, "Hey, I noticed this," and take some time to feel it, and again, take care of yourself. Like, I use these as always an opportunity to take a bath, or to walk a dog, or spend time alone, not doing it for other people for a little bit. So use them as opportunities. um, and you're not alone. I think this is a big one. Again, I gave you credit for being here. I think a lot of people are going through these things, and they're grieving, and this time of year is difficult for a lot of us that have lost people. And one of the things I wanted to tell, this story, this is a Buddha story. A woman comes to the Buddha and says, her son has died, young son, and she's devastated, of course. And so she's carrying the dead body of the child in her arms, and she comes to the Buddha and she begs him to bring the boy back. And what he says is to her is, he says, "Sure, but I want you to get a mustard seed and bring me the mustard seed from every home in the area that does not have a loss." So she goes around house to house, and of course, she can't find one. So she goes back, and then at that point, um, she decides to heal, and they bury the child together, um, and he works with her on how to heal through this and integrate it into her life. And I note the last bullet here on this page is Tonglen, which is the idea of inhaling your feelings and then exhaling comfort to everybody who's felt them. This was one of the toughest Buddhist practices when I first learned about it, but I highly recommend it. Um, so thinking about, admitting what you feel, right? So coming in with the sadness or whatever it is, the longing, there can be a lot of longing around this. And then breathing out that care and comfort to all those that are longing can be really, really helpful. So um, I mentioned that now, and maybe we take a moment here and just inhale whatever it is coming up for us today, and then exhale, caring and support to everyone feeling the same way. Let's do that one more time, inhaling the feelings, exhaling the support. Beautiful. And just notice if there's any lightness that comes from that. Maybe it doesn't. It doesn't always work. It certainly didn't work always for me the first time around, but see if it feels a little lighter just not being alone. Um, not being alone. Um, how does grief show up? Boy, it shows up everywhere. Lots of back pain, joint pain, headaches. My Reiki teacher tells me that, the right soreness on the right side of the body is fear of the future. Soreness on the left side of the body is usually something from the past. And there's different areas of energy within your body. So, like my grief will show up in pain, typically around the shoulder and the heart area. So this is all of this area and in here on the left side, and my knee, which is just an odd thing, but it does show up there. So it can show up in different things. It can show up in heart problems, digestive issues. If you don't kind of work through it, it will show up because your body, you may not be letting it out, but your body churns it, and your feelings create uh, issues in your tissues, which is one of my favorite phrases. So it's helpful to try to address them somehow. And the last line is traumatic grief studies show that if you have traumatic grief and you don't find a way to process it, it can show up in really, uh, you know, difficult disease, cancer, heart disease, things like that in 12 to 18 months. But that was the thing that I really internalized when I had my big loss in 2018. I really knew that I had to figure it out. I didn't want to. I had seen and my part, the person I lost, had not processed that for his losing his parents, and I think that was a lot of why. He had difficulty with his health afterwards. So it was just like it was just a wake up call that I had to deal with it. Um, and how do you do that, Donna? Well, seeking professional help is really an awesome thing. I have a therapist and I worked with them for a long time. Grief groups are great. Most hospices have them. And you just call, and they're free. You can call them up and see when the next round is going, and they'll have you probably meet with the grief counselor, and then you'll be in a group of other people. Um, I note holistic practitioners here. So this is Reiki masters, EFTs. That's emotional freedom technique. That's a technique that I was involved in, and I highly recommend that. It's like acupuncture, but it's really focused around trauma. And I can, tell you more about that. But that's one that really is particularly helpful for me, because a lot of times when you lose somebody, in a hospital, or even going through the hospice process, it can be very traumatic. And those feelings, those emotions can get stuck in your body, and they may not get out without some sort of help. And yoga helps with that, meditation, dancing, physical activity can release those things. Massages can be helpful, but EFT is a technique it's quite good with it. And it's just basically a tapping technique if you haven't heard of it before, but it's very, very helpful. Also really helpful to have a healthy routine, not, for diet reasons or anything like that, but just, you know, in those times where it's really difficult, it's helpful to have things to do, right, that are healthy for you. And I know some here, but you probably have great ideas. Sleep is really, really important at these times. Probably one of the biggest ones. So some things that have worked well is light routines, making sure that you get vitamin D during your day, light, outside, and then making sure that you turn off your technology. So keep it away. I actually, my biggest Christmas present for my family this year has been little alarm clocks, so that they stop using their phone as an alarm clock, because it's helped me tremendously to have that phone across the room and have a little alarm clock next to my bed, so that I don't, pick up the phone and bring that blue light into my face. Um, and as I started to say in the beginning, when you first, in particular, when you first lose somebody, keeping busy is really helpful, because the sheer shock of it is just too much to take. So your body you kind of need something to do. At least most people do. So I mean, I was a big puzzler when my dad died. I think I did puzzles for 6 months, nonstop, because it was just something to always keep my hands busy. Work is great. Watching funny TV marathons, because a lot of times you can't read. So sometimes it just helps. I watch disaster films. I'm a big disaster film person when things are a mess. Um, and books can be good too, if you can keep your brain in them. But it can be hard at first. And sometimes it's better to do short stories or smaller books. Um, get a grief book. There's 3 mentioned here. How to Survive the Loss of a Love is probably the best one, I think, of the bunch, but that's just me. It's just easy. It's a 30-page little book. It's got small little poems kind of written in it, and it's how I learned to take baths when I was sad. So I think it's probably one of the best books ever. Um, to manage it, as I've been going through here, self-care is great. So this is the 3% happier rule. So, when you're in the depth of grief, imagining being, happy is hard, right? But and you're never going to get to like 90% happier, but we might be able to do 3. That's kind of how. And this is a theme from Maria Soros, who I took a grief session with her at Kripalu. I highly recommend her. She's written a book. Her book's called A Short Course in Happiness, and it's all around this idea of just, small little moves every day to make yourself just a little happier. And these big days like the Christmas holiday or other holidays, just making sure that you come up with a routine for that day that includes some sort of self-care. So I list some things here. Again, making a playlist of music that you like. Christmas light tours, like getting somewhere out and about, is good, even for a short amount of time. Staying inside all the time is really difficult. One of the things that in the grief group that I went to is she really recommended that if you're feeling really wallowy, you're really in the depth of it, leave the room, change your space, because that will help you. It just breaks up the energy. It gives you something else to look at, and it tends to pull you out of it. Even it's not going to make you happy, right? It's not going to make you jump or for a jig or anything, but it's going to help you just get out of it for a little bit, or just, stop feeling like it's the end of the world. It's not. It's awful, but it's not the end of the world. Um, but that's hard. It's hard to think that way all the time. Sometimes it just hurts so much, and I get it. Do something creative. This is my favorite thing to do. So I like to write, as you may know. I do draw, believe it or not, sing, cooking. There's a lot of creative things you can do. So I think everybody's creative. So it's just you just haven't done it for a while. Just think about the things that you like to do in school when they gave you, time to do something creative. What did you like to do? And go back to that. It's a great way to like do something that makes you forget time, because those are such valuable activities now, when you're grieving, finding something that makes you forget time, because you're really involved in it. You're really in the moment then, and not sitting in the past or the future. Um, and I just want to take a moment on guilt, because guilt is very normal. When I did my EFT session in Tulum, the emotional freedom technique. They spent a lot of time on the trauma part of it, kind of tapping that away. But then they spent a lot of time on guilt, and guilt is huge around death. I think we all have it. I wish I would have done differently. I wish I would have gone with my loved one to the market where he had his stroke. There's things that you just wish you had done. Why did I get so annoyed with his kids? Why did I get annoyed with, all kinds of things, right? You wasted time, but you didn't know better. And it's a wasted emotion, guilt is. Your loved one knows that you love them. They loved you. They wouldn't want you to feel this way. They don't blame you. They don't probably care anymore. Not about, they love you, it's not that. They just don't probably care about the same kinds of things we do now. Um, least that's based on my psychic interaction with my psychic, is that they doesn't feel like they're just on the same plane anymore, but they love us dearly and care about what happens to us, but they don't care about the things that they cared about. It's kind of like if you ever left a job, right? And in the job, it was everything around you was the most important thing, but once you leave that job, you're not kind of as in it anymore, right? You mean you may have some feelings about people, but it's not like, it's just not that important because you've moved on. It's kind of how it is, I think, for our loved ones when they die. But so don't worry about it, right? You did your best. Most of us would have done better, right, if we'd known that we were going to lose them. You just don't waste the time on those I woulda, coulda, shouldas because we all have them, and we're all human. There's nothing we can do about it. So I think it's an important one to let go of. Um, Take one more moment on sleep. It is the most important thing for your body restoration. It is the way our body is able to repair, and certainly grief and loss creates a wound in our body, and we need to give it time to repair. If you're having trouble sleeping, these are all the things that you probably need to think about. You know, I let you read them, but I think the big ones are trying to eat dinner earlier because your body needs to digest the food. Limiting alcohol is really important. You'll sleep a lot better without it. And then I did talk about lights before. Listen to sleep meditations. I have recommendations if you want to ask that I can give, and I think they're great. And then use some breathing practices. One of my favorite ones is counting 39 breaths. I know 39 is a random number, but it does work. And I just count my breaths for 39 times. And typically, if I don't fall asleep, I'm at least a lot more relaxed after that. So highly recommend those practices. Um, and then let's get to the elephant in the room. The holidays. Um, it is usually better than what you anticipate. It is harder to anticipate these things. The day of is never as bad typically as the night before. So just know that, right? That it's not going to be as bad as you anticipate. It just is going to be. It's just going to be a day. Um, and I highly recommend creating a plan for the day, but being open to breaking it. So I had one of these days the other day, and I went to Wawa, got coffee, and went to the tree that I love that was planted for one of my loved ones, and I do that pretty routinely. When I'm feeling kind of down about losing him. So just good to have those routines, a way to honor them because you'll feel it because it'll help release the energy by having some sort of thing to remember them. But also knowing that you may not be able to do anything. So it's very possible you'll wake up and I don't want to do anything today. And so, don't get into something that you absolutely have to do. Um, and then I note here, pick one happy thing that you like to do for yourself, you know, whatever it is, something healthy, right? But like whatever it is, like if it means taking a walk with the dog or again, getting the bath or whatever it is, make sure you get that time for you, that one thing. Because even no matter what it is, no judgment, right? You'll just feel better because you did something for yourself. Um, Try to remember loved ones with happy memories, pictures. You know, tell stories with your loved ones about about things that they did. I love doing that. I think it's really helpful. And then starting a new tradition that does not involve the person that's not there is really good. So starting something completely new is really helpful because it's just fresh, right? You don't have, there's no regret in it. There's no missing in it. Um, and then finally, I'm a big believer in magic. I think look for signs that your loved one is connecting with you. This last Father's Day, I was walking my dog and lilies were the flower that my dad raised, and he always, loved them and would cut them. And I've written about that in the past. He was a big lover of daylilies, particularly because, they kind of simulate our lives, right? Daylilies are only alive for a day and then they die, but they're gorgeous as they bloom, and they're so important, and it just keeps you in the moment. And So I was walking down the street by my house, and there's all these lilies on our in our bed, and there was a hummingbird there, and um, my fiance um, was always called a hummingbird um, because he always flitted around, doing things for everybody. And here was this hummingbird. I've never seen a hummingbird in real life, you know, until that day. And maybe I saw one at a zoo, but not in real life. And the hummingbird was, you know, um, getting nectar from the lily. That's just not, that's just magic, right? Those two things came together on Father's Day, both of them fathers. One was my father, one was a tremendous father. It just, you just can't explain that stuff. And I have cardinals that visit me in flocks on days when I'm really upset about something or scared or something's going on with the kids. So just believe in magic. You know, you don't have to tell anybody about it like I just did, but it is there. They're there. There's still a hand. Their spirit is still with us in some way, shape, or form because there's just not that many cardinals out there that I've had so many come to visit me. So um, anyway, I think it's just really helpful just to believe a little bit in that magic. Um, so at this point, I think I'm going to pause the recording and just see if we want to try to do something around this activity. So this is the connecting through happier memories. And when I've done this in the past, it's been um, a great thing to do because you get a chance to think about something happy. And then if you share those things, because it's nice to share them in a group of people that are all going through the same thing. Um, because you might cry, you may get sad, but that's okay because you're thinking about a wonderful thing. So I'm gonna just stop here for a moment, stop the recording, um, and then we'll go from there. So hold on one sec. So we're coming back. I'm just gonna bring the presentations up. So we just did some sharing and just really helpful to talk to other people um, that are going through it or have been through this because no one really knows what to say to each other. And probably the most important thing for a grieving person is to give them some space to talk about it um, and talk about the feelings. We were just talking about you need to kind of have to let them, roll over you and actually feel them, which is really hard. So, and what everybody kind of wants to do, and they mean well, but they kind of want you to stop, because it makes them uncomfortable about their own mortality and the mortality of their loved ones. But it's it's helpful to be around others that are going through it. Um, and here we are. I wrote a slide about it. The best way out is through. Numbing does not help. We numb with a lot of different things. Popcorn. I numbed with popcorn sometimes. Um, Alcohol. Eating too much, exercising too much. Anything that hurts you. Right. In the end, is probably what we do just to try to forget about it. The only way out of this is to feel the feelings and then take really good care of yourself as you process this really difficult thing. Um, and as you continue to do that, it does get easier. Um, and there is a benefit to this. The Buddhists talk about this. The book, The Untethered Soul. I don't have that listed here, but that is a great book, and they talk about contemplating death. And the idea is, you know. By recognizing that life is short, we make better choices. We don't take anything for granted. We don't take anybody for granted. It doesn't mean we're perfect or, that people don't tick us off, but it means that we do less of that, right? And that we take the moments, we notice the moments as they come a little bit more than we might have otherwise. Um, my loved one has a dog that's older. He's 13, and because I've lost so many people, even though he can be annoying, and he can be annoying, I I I it doesn't annoy me as much as I think it would have before, because I'm like I'm not sure how he's going to be around that much longer, and I want to enjoy those times with him. And that's the benefit of losing people and losing other animals over time. So anyway, there are benefits here. And I guess one of the reason I put this last quote is that just because we get hurt, we don't want to close ourselves off. I'm actually writing a piece right now about that. That love is the way that we learn to love ourselves. Loving others and being in relationships with others is how we learn to love ourselves, because it's really hard for us to love ourselves. Um, but by practicing that with others, then we can kind of begin to turn that towards ourselves and treat ourselves better in most cases. And this is healthy love, right? It's not unhealthy love that we're giving out, but um, we do really find it with each other. So don't let the hurt keep you from connecting, and continuing to connect. I think is really the message there. Um, so that's it. We're going to just uh, close down the recording so that we can talk together. Um, but I just want to take one moment here at the end with everybody before we start to talk about the things that we take away. Um, and ignore that last bullet because that's from, that's from my work one. But and then I also just want to mention that my the book is coming out if you want to learn more about grief and tools to manage it. And also a really nice love story. My book is coming out on January 1, and we're doing a launch then. But I want to just take a moment with everybody here to just ground back in. So let's just close our eyes for a moment. So we've kind of brought up a lot of things here and a lot of things that can be um, difficult. So I want to inhale, exhale, let those feelings kind of wash over us. And then just do that a couple more times, inhaling, exhaling, let the feelings wash over and fade. And one more. Letting them go for now. And let's come back to just grounding in again, feeling the safety and security. So just noticing the scalp, letting it soften and relax. The eyes soften and melt. Let the jaw release. Let the neck and the shoulders soften and fall. Notice the spot between the shoulder blades and inhale. Exhale, let it melt all the way down the spine, into the hips and the legs. Relaxing the arms all the way down to the fingers, the legs down to the toes. Imagine there's a white light in the heavens. It's your white light. It can be something divine, what you believe in. It can be somebody from your past who loves you or someone who loves you now. Let that light come down from the heavens through the top of your head and wash down through the body, down through the floor, down through the earth, wrapping itself around the center of the earth. Let that light grow in your body and envelop the body with safety and security and love. You are not alone. You are safe. And you are loved. Love never dies. It is just energy. It's always with us. Take a big breath in and exhale. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Thank you so much for being here today and for listening to this. Take good care of yourself. That is the best gift that you can give. That is what your loved ones would have wanted, is what they still want. Be well.